I did go to the movie theater over the weekend, and I went to see A24's Materialists, which is written and directed by Celine Song, starring Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal, and they're supposed to be in a love triangle. The first thing I'll say is this movie should not have been marketed as a rom-com. It is not romantic, nor is it comedic. It's actually quite somber and dark most of the time. Much darker themes than I expected, and they were marketing it and editing the trailer to lure you in, thinking it was lighthearted. That's not what I got.
Part of one of the things that I think is funny is like Hollywood has that problem when they're not, if it's not like just a straightforward action movie or a straightforward horror movie or a straightforward comedy where there is no, there's no like leeway at all to the genre. A lot of times, think of like Jennifer's Body. They didn't know how to market it. And they like that is a conversation that comes up with executives like, okay, this is a great script, but how do we market this? I think that's why they don't even bother with that anymore. Movies like this go to streaming often.
Right, it definitely
or it gets turned into a show.
More like a streaming movie, and it also dragged on for too long. But yeah, there was no romance, there was no chemistry, there was no comedy, there was nothing played for laughs in this movie, from what I could tell. And also the love triangle aspect of it wasn't very intriguing either, because there was no rivalry between Chris Evans, who plays Lucy's ex-boyfriend from 10 years ago, and Pedro Pascal, who plays the rich Mr. Right guy who has everything going for him on paper. There was no rivalry between the two of them.
No conflict?
No. And she seems to have no chemistry with her ex-boyfriend. And no
Chris
chemistry.
Evans.
Yeah, Chris Evans. And no chemistry with Pedro Pascal on screen either. So she's stuck between marrying for love with a guy she seems to have no chemistry with because he's Chris Evans, I guess, and then marrying for wealth with another guy that she has no chemistry with. And that would make sense if she had this electric chemistry on screen with Chris Evans, the poor guy, but she didn't. So I was confused about what the push and pull of it all was.
Wait, that's Dakota Johnson, right?
Yes.
I think she's just anti-chemistry.
Maybe it's her. Maybe she's the problem.
Didn't they say that she had no chemistry in 50 Shades of Grey, too?
I didn't watch that, so I don't know.
She was in that, right?
She's pretty blank.
I think she just... See, I think she's hilarious in a really, really, like, empty vessel kind of... She's very dry.
Yeah.
Which works for a certain type of character, but if the idea is that you have to have like really, really electric chemistry with somebody, she would have to be able to emote to show that.
Right.
Emoting isn't really the type of acting I get from her. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing. There's plenty of actors who can pull off deadpan where it's their thing. But if the script calls for more than that, then it seems like she's not the person you hire for this.
Most of it kind of centers around her having a moral crisis about her career, because she is a professional matchmaker. She works for a matchmaking agency in New York and makes a modest living, but meets a lot of crazy people through her line of work. One of her clients ends up on a date that she set up and ends up getting assaulted on that date. And sorry for the spoiler, but I don't think any of you were planning on seeing this. She goes through this crisis where she doesn't know if she should be a matchmaker anymore because she's putting people in danger. And she's at first planning to get with Pedro Pascal, who is a unicorn, as she put it. All the math. He is 6'2", he's a multi-millionaire, he's handsome. Again, I think Pedro Pascal is being astroturfed. It probably should have been Chris Evans playing the rich guy and Pedro Pascal playing the struggling actor.
I mean, that's them doing the subverting expectations thing.
It was lame. But then she decides she doesn't want to get married as a business deal. She wants to be in love with the man she marries. So she breaks up with Pedro Pascal, and they agree that he's going to become one of her clients, and she's going to matchmake him with somebody. But then she kind of flips back and forth on whether she wants to get back together with her ex-boyfriend, who's broke and a loser, and he doesn't really have any redeeming qualities that distract from that. It would be different if he were broke and has a heart of gold.
Chris Evans being smaller now, he gives dweeb energy when he's not jacked. So he actually, in my mind's eye, he works for that role.
Well, it would make sense if her broke ex-boyfriend we're this great guy who has this amazing charisma, or he is, this great guy who has all of these personality traits she finds attractive, but he's just not a great person, and he has no aspirations. And
they should have got Armie Hammer.
It was just weird. I don't know. Like, I just didn't know what we were supposed to be rooting for the entire time. This movie, most of all, made me realize that I must be conservative, because I cannot engage with art. I'm just not capable of it. I walk away from every movie thinking like, well, what was the moral of the story? And if it doesn't have that, I get angry.
I literally never think of that question.
Maybe that shows that temperamentally you're more liberal than I am, but I just can't do it.
Let me rephrase. So when I came out of the Crow reboot, I am able to say that there's a problem with it because I have the original film to look at as kind of the film negative of it. Like, this is what it should have looked like as far as the morality of drug use and what that movie was trying to say. But that's because I was looking for it because it was there in the original film and it was well done. But I don't go searching for that type of moral question when I watch a movie. I tend to be more interested in how the characters' dynamics worked.
Well, I just wish that movies had some sort of lesson or some sort of message or perspective, but it doesn't have a perspective at all.
I just started watching 24, and I was watching this. This sounds like a weird non sequitur, but it's not. I was watching this like 4-hour long retrospective of House, and this guy makes he makes the claim that the show was inspired by the Bush administration, and he gets to talking about how like Hollywood producers were being approached by members of the Bush administration. He's like, could you stop showing Jack Bauer torturing people? Because that's what they think we do with everyone. And like that's as close as I get to thinking about morality in that situation.
Well, that's more about the reverberations from what the
But even
project...
then, like I think about it in the show. I was like, well, he's torturing like 30 people, but his wife and his daughter were kidnapped. So, of course he's going to torture people. Mm-hmm. So I would say, having not been one to see it, I would say Dakota Johnson was probably the issue.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a hoot in a Madam Web way.
Chris Evans can be charismatic when he's given the right material. Pedro Pascal has never interested me outside of maybe the ability to be the best of a bad bunch in dramatic roles, like in The Last of Us. As I said, like I think he carried the weight of those dramatic scenes, but that wasn't like I was saying like this show wouldn't have worked with somebody else. Any good, reasonably decent dramatic actor could have been dropped into those scenes and done them. He's not somebody that I think of as like being absolutely indispensable to any of his portrayals.
Well, I just wish that it were more black and white, because Pedro Pascal's character is the guy that she doesn't love but wants to marry for his money. Although his personality is nothing, there's nothing wrong with him. He's not a womanizer. He's not a drug addict. He's not...
So not interesting either.
Anything. There's nothing wrong with him. And he actually wants to get married for some of the right reasons. He said to her, like, I want to marry someone I can trust, who's going to be a lifelong partner. We're buried next to each other. Mm-hmm. I respect you. I think you're valuable. And I think that we make sense together for reasons beyond just the superficial. I felt like that was a really good monologue. But then Chris Evans is just saying, like, I love you and I'm useless and a struggling actor at the age of 37, but, like, we can make it work. And by the end of it, she does end up with Chris Evans. A lot of women don't like the ending, I've noticed. But
they wanted her to end up with the rich guy?
No, yeah, they wanted her to be with Pedro Pascal because there's nothing wrong with him as a character. That it would have made it so much easier to understand if Pedro Pascal were rich but kind of a piece of shit, and she was just willing to make the trade-off. But he's actually a nice person. Or
he goes on some type of character growth journey in the movie where he starts off as a piece of shit. Then she becomes the guy, or he becomes her client and goes through some type of reformation, and they come back to each other in the end. That could be interesting. But even then, it leaves into question like what they're saying about rich versus poor, and you've kind of written yourself into a corner.
And then Chris Evans proposes to her he doesn't even kneel down. he ties
He's only got one pair of jeans.
he
doesn't wanna get
ties
dirty.
a daisy into a circle and puts it on her finger at the end. And then they leave you on a cliffhanger as to whether or not she's going to continue being a professional matchmaker, because they offer her this huge promotion and she's like, I'll think about it.
Okay.
But I think maybe, possibly, the ultimate message of the movie that I can take away from it is that highly intelligent, high agency people probably feel more that they need to marry for love because they're more self-reflective. And maybe the people that she's taking on as clients aren't as introspective about their lives and are willing to marry for more superficial reasons. Maybe that's what the takeaway could be.
Maybe.
That was my takeaway.
Okay.
I think.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.